Locked and loaded, and here we go on a sunny Saturday, January 23rd, 2021. It's come down to this. We've reached the crescendo. It almost feels we've reached the peak of Mount Olympus here with the Pegasus, the fifth running, obviously coming up a bit later on, a 12-race Saturday, a blank slate, and good vibes all around that'll reach that pitch crescendo as we welcome you to more of a breakfast edition of Gulfstream Park today. Jason Blue and Acacia Courtney alongside, and Acacia and everybody out there, hope everybody has a great Pegasus Day.
Absolutely. Safe trips to all running today. 12 races on the card this afternoon, and we're pleased to welcome in a limited number of fans on track today. So hope everybody stays safe. We have strict protocols in place to make sure that they're safe and fun racing for a spectacular Pegasus World Cup day.
Definitely a day very much built around, of course, the Pegasus races later, but there are 7 graded stakes in total, some big guarantees, and let's get it going here with about 66 minutes out from race number 1. Little daily housekeeping, though, and taking a step back as to what transpired yesterday. Want to congratulate everybody that cashed for over $900 in the Stronach 5.
Absolutely, as it always pays so well, that low 12% takeout. And I mean, look, it's really, with the exception of the nightcap here at Gulfstream, where we had a $9 winner, over at Santa Anita, $11 winner, but the other horses seem to be pretty logical in general, and you still get $900. So that's a wager that's always a lot of fun. Of course, we'll be back in action next Friday again.
Absolutely, and that'll be the eve, believe it or not, of the Holy Bull Stakes here at Gulfstream. That's our first Kentucky Derby points race up for grabs. I'm looking forward to that.
Got a chance to see some of the potential runners schooling this past week with some of the Pegasus horses sitting on go for Dale Romans, Tarantino for Rodolphe Brisset, both of whom looked really, really good now as newly turned 3-year-olds.
All right. Now, I took my licks in the meantime yesterday in Beat the Expert. I do want to congratulate. It was a tough day. It was a tough Friday in the pick box. And Max Ramiro and Andy, congratulations. And I guess be on the lookout for that Beat the Expert polo in the mail.
That's right. We appreciate everybody that played. As always, Jason's swan song with Beat the Expert. I don't think you're going to miss that contest too much, Jason.
You know what? I may start playing it now and take it on you and Ronnie, come to think of it.
I like it. I like it. It's always fun. Ron Nicoletti will be up next in the hot seat on the Holy Bull Eve.
All right, let's get on to the good stuff here. A 12-race fast and firm Saturday at Gulfstream Park, and we dive into that first race and the perfect kind of scene set where you have nearly a capacity field on the turf. Opening pick 5, the opening leg, and what are we doing, Acacia?
I had a tough time with this sequence, and I think all of the races today are incredibly competitive. I think there'll be a fair number of people who will single Performer in the Fred Hooper. That's the 4th race, our first stake of the day. I did not feel that confident. I'm going to use Fat Man in there as well. I'm 3 deep in the opening leg here. I do like Follow the Flag off the layoff a bit. I'm hoping this Tap It filly comes back well off the bench from Mike Matz. You've got a nice maiden special weight. I've got American Law and Dynamic One in race number 2. I would have maybe liked to use 1 or 2 others in that race, but we'll see if that one will get me through. 3 deep in the 3rd race, again, Performer and Fat Man in the Fred Hooper in the 4th. And the sequence wraps up with a big turf field key scratch in there, for me at least, of Bodie Cream, who I did like, who had some speed. So that leaves me with Chad Brown's layoff runner Emirati and a Pletcher layoff runner in Opry.
Yeah, layoffs abound actually in that 5th race naturally. And even looking at this first race field, it's about mostly layoffs just in terms of numbers and who's coming from where, between Todd's filly on the rail and Apurate, who has not run since November. And the layoffs vary certainly in scope and spans, but Brian Lynch has got 2 in the mix, including the number 2 Moral Reasoning. I know Seth Klarman has horses with Jorge Abreu, but this is the first horse I think I've seen with Klarovich Stables teaming up with Brian Lynch on the number 2 Moral Reasoning.
I think this might be the first one at Gulfstream. I think I've seen 1 or a couple, maybe I think actually 1 tomorrow as well. But this one, she's been a little bit of a tricky filly in that she did break her maiden nicely at Aqueduct. We saw her in some stakes company back at the start of 2020, and then she's just never really been able to kind of get back to that form we saw towards the start of her career. She does come in first time for Brian Lynch, and while he's an excellent trainer, I thought that this was a little bit of a key stat for this one, who might take some attention in the opener given some of the races that she she's been running in. First off, the trainer switch on the turf, 7 for 51, so not great numbers as far as the win does go, but pretty good finishing in the money, 31%, and it is a big ROI too of $2.59. If she's able to recapture some of that form that she once showed, she could be a major player. Apurate, though, it means hurry up in Spanish. This one is the main speed for Todd Pletcher and Luis Saez.
Down inside. Now, in the middle of the pack, I wound up going to the 5 Arencia in this race. This is a big test for her. We're going to find out.
Much tougher.
Much tougher field stepping up. But from the figure to the fact that she just obliterated that crew, and it was her only race to this point going long on the turf. And I'm hoping going in, she's catching some horses off layoffs, and it just seemed like the version of Arencia we saw last time, I think, was better than any of her other races. And maybe she's just found a home, routing on the turf. And that's my MO with her in the middle of the pack for trainer Brendan Walsh. Layoff horse, maybe the longest layoff, or certainly one of the longer ones in the race, is your top pick, the regally bred Tapit Mushka, number 9, Follow the Flag.
Yeah, she really is regally bred. Top and bottom, and you see that with that expensive purchase price. She really improved so much second time out, and I remember really liking her that day, getting the blinkers on. She comes back off of a layoff, that I know, but I'm hoping that she comes back sharply. She seems to be training really well up at Palmettos, reunites with John Velasquez today and keeping those blinkers on. She was just one that I just kept going back to, just always liking her and hoping I get a bit of a price in the opener. Brendan Walsh's other runner was the one that I actually preferred of his two, and Vividly, who's also off a layoff. And typically with these horses from this barn, I like to give them a race, but she definitely has a little bit of back class and having run against some solid races in Europe.
Yeah, notice she's a former Juddmonte horse who is now first-time Brendan Walsh in this country and first race since last summer. We'll see how she does on this Gulfstream Park turf course. To the main we go. Outside of the non-stakes today, I mean, it's basically turf allowance fields and two very nice-looking 3-year-old maiden special weights, and race 2 is the first of those 3-year-old maidens on the card at 1.16 miles. You've got a situation where both the 3 American Law, who's coming out of the Donegal Bay race, and of course the Todd Pletcher trained number 11 Dynamic One, they are the benchmarks to this field because both horses exit 2 very fine performances. Don't love the post for Dynamic One, but I really like that horse that beat him last time out. You got the big improvement with Dynamic One second out, and I'm a big fan of Greatest Honor moving forward for Shug.
I think Greatest Honor ran really well going the 1.16 miles that day. My problem with Dynamic One, and especially because he has an outside post, is that he is still not good out of the gate. He just completely walked out of the gate in his debut, and he didn't really get out that great last time, even with the blinkers on. So I need to see a lot of improvement as far as getting out of the gate today. We'll kind of put him behind the 8 ball with the outside post if he's not able to break cleanly. American Law, I thought that he was one that would improve going 2 turns. He was really kind of a laid-back type of appearance, a physical that struck me as one that would go 2 turns, and he just kind of kept that grinding running style late. Simovic came back to win, and I think Donegal Bay is talented and went wire to wire. I think I agree these are 2 very live races these horses are coming out of.
And then we have Butch Reed Jr. Running the 9, riding with Biden.
There's your hunch bet.
You got that right. A few days after the inauguration, Butch, of course, training Vequist, who won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies and is a 1-9 shot to be named champion 2-year-old filly of 2020. She not long ago arrived up at Palmettos in Boynton Beach, which is great to hear. And this horse, I would assume, was basically on the van with her. Respectable effort first out at Parks. I had noticed the winner came back and didn't run all that well in the I think it was the Spectacular Bid Stakes at Laurel Park, ran 7th in that spot. What do you make of that colt? One of a couple in the race by Constitution.
And it's interesting because it was a muddy track. He did show some speed and ran well, but he's got to stretch out in distance for the first time today. Second-time starters going from sprint to route. The barn is just 0 for 4, which I was kind of surprised it was such a small sample size, but 3 for 4 in the money. Typically, Butch Reed is very, very good with second-time starters. Vequist was a second-time starter to break her maiden in Grade 1 company, and she is pointing to the Devonadale and Gulfstream Oaks. So looking forward to seeing her once again here in Florida.
Definitely. Back on the turf, race 3, mile to 16th, older allowance optional claimer that has a number of horses either snowbirding and traveling to this turf course for the first time this meet and or returning off layoffs. And maybe the longest layoff in the race happens to be our top pick in the mix, who will start with Acacia in the 9 Homeland, who was cut out to be a pretty promising horse and certainly flashed for his brief 3-race career thus far for Bill Mott. Some ability. It's a combination of me having faith in this barn that has just been so en fuego white hot, bringing the 9 Homeland back off the layoff, ready to roll here in 2021.
The barn has been in such a good groove lately, especially with the mounts Junior Alvarado has had, too, who's been riding very, very well. And I love looking back at some of these layoff horses and the ones that they faced before the layoff in the Central Park, being ahead by Pixelate, who we'll see today in the Pegasus World Cup Turf for Mike Stidham. And last time out in the Dania Beach Field Pass, who's gone on to be a graded stakes winner, as has Get Smokin'. So he faced some really good horses back at the start of 2020.
Definitely. Now, Bray's coming out of a loss, just got no pace behind Winter's back up in New York. It is now first time Mike Maker on this circuit. He seems like a logical contender. And what do we get real fast from the 5 Jewelstone, who clearly tipped his hand at being an okay turf horse? I don't know how well those fields held together, and that's not like a total indictment on him. It's not his fault that all those horses seemingly turned out to be lower-level claimers or mid-claimers, including B-Catcher, who won the nightcap here on Thursday. But I do like the way Jewelstone was clearly progressing here last winter.
I thought it was a beautiful performance from him, regardless of what he beat. And at the time, I had really liked him. And then, unfortunately, we just haven't seen him since then. So we don't really know where he stacks up, if he was just much better than what he faced that day, or if he's kind of along those same lines. So I liked that race from him, and I'm clearly with the layoff horses in here, but I think it'll be a real test for him as he steps into deeper waters today.
And Junkanoo, meanwhile, just turned 5. He's only run 5 times. Has never run in a claiming race, though, and I still feel like Chad's able to maximize horses like this. Many starts and fits with this guy. Does he come back and fire a big race?
Well, he's another one that was facing really good horses, graded on a curve, went on a really good run for Chad and Klarovich Stables. Doswell, obviously, and Colonel Liam, who we'll see in the McKnight and Pegasus Turf later on. But he's one that's clearly been a little bit tough to keep on the racetrack.
All right, let's move on to the 4th. Speaking of being on the racetrack, we just didn't get a chance all that often to see the Phipps homebred and performer, who's going to be a big favorite in the opening graded stakes on today's card, the Grade 3 Fred Hooper at 125K on the main going a mile. And he is, in terms of my excitement level, he's a horse outside of the Pegasus fields I'm most looking forward to today. And I was curious just sending out a poll before I left the track yesterday because, you know, it does feel like the hype train, as I said, left the station a long time ago with this Phipps homebred who beat Tax in the Discovery back in late 2019. How do you think he does tomorrow? Is he a horse that is a little bit of a trappy type runner who's probably going to be in the realm of even money, or is he too good for the crew? And I felt it was worthwhile showing this because this might be the closest poll occasion we've ever sent out. I mean, it's basically split down the middle.
Yeah, it is. I think that's really interesting. And I think he is kind of a polarizing type of horse. He came back off of a layoff. He was scratched the day of opening day at Belmont and trying to come back in June with a foot issue. And we didn't see him again until October when he came back off the layoff in that allowance race. And he had such a good performance with just so much left in the tank. And then he did have a very wet track in the Cigar Mile. He was pretty far off of it. Drew Timber got a perfect trip that day, and he was just kind of a relentless grinding style. It was a much wetter track, Cigar Mile day, than it was in what was listed as muddy in the early October race at Belmont. I just don't really know exactly what to do with him. I thought this workout, which we'll show you, was pretty interesting as he was working in company with Code of Honor, who will be one of the shorter priced horses in the Pegasus later on. And Code of Honor's on the inside. He's a much smaller horse than Performer, who's a big, stocky, burly type of individual.
Wow, what a difference in size.
It really
there.
is. And Code of Honor never really grew. He's always been a smaller type. But I thought Performer actually galloped out better than Code of Honor, which was kind of interesting. And he's one that I want to be good. I want him to run well today. I also love that he's the half-brother to Breaking the Rules. It's another one of these tremendous Phipps pedigrees once again.
Yep.
I hope he finds the form again today.
I'm with you. I'm hoping the same goes for the 7 Heichel, who's done some nice things, hasn't run all that.
I did not like him last time.
Oh, you didn't?
He really disappointed me, I will be honest.
Yeah,
seeing him before. He was my pick in the Mr. Prospector.
Right. I remember you telling me, actually, and mentioning it on the air, that your confidence level, I mean, really took a nosedive there. Does he run a bit better, dropping out of the loss against Sleepy Eyes Todd? And then you've got the 5 Fat Man, who was second to War Story in this race a year ago, who always seems to run well. And I'm wondering with Fat Man, just ultimately, not that he ran bad in the Harlan's Holiday, but I could see him third off the layoff, just really coming into this race as good as Kent could possibly have him.
And I know you spoke to Kent before the Harlan's Holiday. He's such that big, stocky horse that takes racing to get back to fitness. And he did win this Fred Hooper last year. He was second in last year's Harlan's Holiday behind War Story. So that was Kent's first graded stakes win. Let's see if he can defend his title.
All right, sounds good. Let's move on to the 5th race here as we cash out the early pick 5, which is a 62K allowance optional claimer going a mile. Bodie Cream is a horse you and I both liked, I think. Was he your top pick here?
Yep.
You know, and he had speed. So his early scratch is a pretty big defection in this race, and that sent me in the direction of, well, a battle of the Titans in this spot with two layoff horses to boot, with Chad's horse, the number 2 Emirati, who has run some big races and has run pretty well in this country for Chad, and a barn, by the way, that has outstanding numbers off year-plus layoffs against the Todd Pletcher trained, the 7 Opry, who really looked like he was starting to get good last year before hitting the sidelines.
It's too bad because I remember there's certain horses that you can just envision them as soon as you hear their name, and I can picture him so beautifully. He's just such a lovely physical on this horse. It's so easy for him to just come into my mind, and that's why I ended up scratching into him. He did run well off of a big layoff last year, and that was what really intrigued me in coming in to get the win in that nice allowance race with his stablemate Bourbon in May. And Marati has also run well off of a big layoff before too. They both are kind of tactical. I'd imagine that Opry would sit right off of his stablemate Winter's Back.
Winter's Back, who defeated Bray last out, got a good ride from Kendrick, just slowed things down on the front end up at the Big A. Todd's got 2, Chad's got 1. We'll see who proves best there in the 5th. On to race number 6 before we take a little breather on the broadcast and we get right back into Todd and Chad knocking heads in this one. 2 marquee-looking firsters. We'll mention more than just a couple of firsters in the race, but, you know, as you work your way down chronologically, you run into the Shadwell homebred, the 3 Ghazali. Good luck with Pete. Pete getting that out. Do you know the pronunciation for this horse?
I'm guessing it's Ghazali. I'm sure that Pete has looked it up and is familiar with that. But Colt by Curlin, as you would expect, a monster pedigree for this one, who sold for more than $1 million. The dam is the sister to Alternation, and it was a pretty strong Pin Oak stud family on the bottom side. A lot of them were with Graham Motion. So this one looks like a well-meant colt in this spot, as does Stage Raider, the half-brother to Justify, who we'll get a chance to see today. And what a producer this mare has been.
Well, yeah, the lieutenant's in the family, and you know, I just found it interesting, not only, of course, having a half-brother, which you're not going to see all that often to a Triple Crown winner. You know, kind of neat. There's just Triple Crown all over the place with the 10 Stage Raider, obviously being by Pioneer the Nile. We'll clearly see, and I'm curious what Chad ultimately feels is the case. I'm going to shoot him a text before the race and just get his vibe regarding a Stage Raider first out. In between, not in terms of post, but, you know, right next to Chad's horse and outside of the Pletcher horse by Curlin is the 9 Full Court Press, who for dialed in at 140K, I felt as though sold pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
The dam was only 1 for 8. This is her first full. But, you know, again, Bilmont's dominance over the last few weeks here, turf dirt 3-year-old maidens, that was first and foremost in my mind, and I opted with the good-looking work tab at Payson Park to boot to just pull the trigger, even though this field has got the potential to be very deep, and I'll take the 9 full court press.
No, I very much agree. I think you have to pay attention to the barn. And to circle back to Stage Raider, because I did want to show the workout, because I think it's an important thing to look at, is this one had been potentially one to sell as a yearling RNA'd for $900 before that $950,000 reserve. And obviously John Gunther fined to keep him as well, as he did not get to race Justify. But he's outside of a filly named Copacetic, who's in tomorrow for Chad, who I think looks very good as well. And just a nice mover, a solid work. There's a couple of turf winners in the family too, but wanted to show the workout. It's definitely a benefit on XBTV, pulling away nicely for a good gallop out.
Yeah, definitely. So full court press, my pick. You're next door with a Chad's runner. We'll see. I saw the other Pletcher horse, Traveler, on the outside is a pretty short price. Pete's got him pretty low. I think 3.5 to 1 on the line, and you've got a Rod Ortiz riding. Wasn't sure about the tourist influence on the dirt this afternoon, but again, 8 Rings, who was good for a brief time as a 2-year-old for Bob Baffert, seems to be the family star.
Brief time is a Grade 1 winner, was very disappointing into that Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and
the Storm the Court Breeders' Cup Juvenile,
not a fan. Looking at him and looking back from my notes, and 8 Rings, but we'll see what Traveler does. Obviously, the Dam was a very good sprinter too.
All right, we'll sprint into the break. Rainbow 6, Pegasus Fields, a whole lot more coming up. Fifth running of the Pegasus World Cup here at Gulfstream is forthcoming 45 minutes out from race number 1. Here is another 5 palm trees out of 5 in the weather department. A beautiful day down here. I mean, as great as that City of Light race was in bricks and mortar a couple of years ago, this is the weather we want to have. We're really pumped up. Jason and Acacia rejoining all of you here on this live, again, Saturday morning edition of Gulfstream Park today. And as we get down to it, Acacia, we're in stakes basically from here on out. In fact, we are. And the rainbow begins here. And how's the ticket looking today?
I have a single. It's a little bit of a bold single.
Is that Doswell?
Doswell.
Nice.
I've been waiting for him to come back, and I feel like he's just really in a great place right now. I like him going the longer distance. Barkley, Tag, and Robin Smullen have done a tremendous job with this horse, who he looked like a completely different animal last time out, and he ran very well in that Tropical Derby, I should say. As we look to the start, it kicks off with the Marshalls River. I'm 4 deep in here, just not wanting to leave off Vigilante's Way, who obviously the waters get deeper, but I do like her quite a bit. Using Always Shopping and Lovely Lucky in the La Proviantas. I think that 1.5 miles and some speed from Lovely Lucky, she'll be a bit of a price, and I like her in that spot. The inside information, I'm 3 deep. Cinnabunny, I think, should be a little bit more aggressive today, has some speed and maybe a better spot for her, but I do like those horses coming out of the Sugar Swirl. And race number 10 is the McKnight. That'll be my single, Doswell. 4 deep in the Pegasus Turf. Find some prices. I think you can make a case, honestly, for just about every horse in the race if you really try. I'm 3 deep using the 3 favorites in Nixco, Tax, and Code of Honor in the Pegasus World Cup.
And it seems like those 3 horses, I mean, clearly there's a very good chance they might just sit on a different plane than the others in the Pegasus Dirt race. And I don't know, in terms of just overall styles and tactics, they may complement each other quite nicely, where you get the shug closer, code of honor, the speed with Knicks go, and more of a feel-good type stalker presser in tax there for trainer Danny Gargan. The Marshawas River, though, in the meantime, at about 2:40 Eastern, serves as our Rainbow Six opening leg. Fillies and mares, older fillies and mares, in fact, on the turf going 1 mile. And off performer, and just mentioning code of honor a few seconds ago, let's talk about the number 4, Vigilante's Way. We've got her last out W in the Tropical Park Oaks, and my stance with her, my position ultimately, is this is just a FIP shug homebred who is coming into her own, and I would like to think anyway, Acacia, off the far turn here in the replay, we just have not seen her reach her full potential to this point.
I think this was a perfect example, too, of how you do not leave Julian Leperoux alone on the front end like you did with Vigilante's Way. You gave her a nice breather in the second half of the race, and she pulled away really nicely, the half-sister to Mr. Speaker, who's just really developing now. Stepping into tougher company once again, I gave a little nod to Zofel. I know she's off of a layoff, but her last start was against Newspaper of Record, which unfortunately we haven't got. She is retired now, but I thought that was the best race from Newspaper of Record we've seen. And her race from Zofel in the Mint Julep, the Sand Springs prior to that, she's a good mare, and I'm excited to see her back.
How about the My Charmer rematch fillies? I prefer, as far as that grudge match is concerned, I gave the nod to the British bred, the 8-tuned, and although I like Vigilante's Way more, I'd like to think she is still getting the hang of things slowly but surely in this country for H. Graham Motion. Then you've got Nico's Dream. Does she run back to that race? Was it a little bit fluky, or is she just a hard-hitting New York bred that Barkley has got in tip-top career form?
And it's funny, she's a New York bred, but she seems to love it here at Gulfstream Park. And I spoke to Junior Alvarado yesterday, and that's exactly what he said. He said she really runs well here, and he's ridden her several times, knows her well, and she really ran very well for him last time. I wanted to mention the 10, Sweet By and By, who's now with Safi Joseph Jr., still owned by Joe and BC, and she was on top of a very fast pace in the Noble Damsel, won by Villadera, who's now a Grade 1 winner. It was a disappointing race in the Athenia, but I think that she is a talented mare, and this might be a good spot for her coming back.
Yeah, I wasn't sure as I was prepping for the show. I said, you know, did I underestimate Sweet By and By? She was good with Steve Caceres. She ran fine for Tony Dutrow. Now she's first-time Safi. Some good points, and clearly a horse that wants to get involved in that first flight. Blueprinting the race, I would imagine the 6, Evil Lynn, with Flavian Pratt, who's going to be in town to ride today, which is nice to see. May prove the point gal, if you will, on the front end. Anyway, we'll move on to the 8th. We've got the 2 fairly later position guarantees on today's card, with 3/4 of a mil up for grabs in both the late pick 4 and late pick 5. And again, a friendly reminder, Acacia, join us here tomorrow. There won't be such a thing as a Pegasus Day hangover or doldrums, because there'll be a lot of scratch up for grabs in the rainbow.
It will be a mandatory payout tomorrow. The pool estimated to be over $1 million. I'm sure there'll be quite a bit bet into it today, but of course the guarantees: late pick 5 starting in race 8, late pick 4 starting in race 9. All stakes $750,000 apiece.
Let's move on to my late pick 5 ticket in the meantime, and putting a lot of stock clearly in that Via Borghese rematch, preferring, in fact, Always Shopping, who I had liked in that race and was really good. I'm curious to see how the 5 Lovely Lucky does, returning today for Tom Albertrani. It really seemed like going long on the turf brought out her best last summer. And, of course, you've got the 11 Traipsing, who I'm not ready to give up on yet. She didn't get it done as the favorite last time, the Via Borghese, but she is another one. I just don't think we've seen her realize and maximize her full potential. So 1-5-11 to start. Little light maybe in the inside information. I walked away from
That's a tough race.
It is a hard race, and what complicates it in my mind for me is I was wholly unimpressed with everybody that ran in the Sugar Swirl, maybe outside of Ladies Island, who's not coming back today. I just don't think anybody ran well in that spot, and off that opinion, I like this as my time. I didn't single her. Obviously, I've got the Brad Cox horse, Cinnabunny, who you would like to think is going to maybe move forward, second time out for that barn, but 2-4 in that second leg. Respect Doswell, and originally I included the 11 Channel Cat in that third leg in the McKnight. But, you know, if I'm wrong about my maker horse, Acacia, in the middle of the pack there, the 7 Tide of the Sea, and Sadler's Joy needs a race, I feel like Doswell may prove just a little bit better than that field, assuming he runs back to his Fort Lauderdale. He strikes me, although I didn't pick him, like a pretty reliable favorite. And I guess the point I'm getting at, if Sadler's Joy and my maker horse are no good, I just think he's a nice safety net there in Doswell. 3 deep, preferring Todd's, 2 of Todd's horses anyway, Colonel Liam and Social Paranoia. I also included another Twist of Fate, and wrapping it up with the 4 Knicks Go, who it's funny, you know, if you just drew a line or blacked out the first half of his career and only looked at his 3 races for Brad Cox, I mean, people would be talking about this horse like he was the second coming of Arrogate.
Yeah, he's been incredible in his last 3 races, winning the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. He's been a wire-to-wire winner on an easy lead with all of those. And we'll talk more about the pace scenario and the Pegasus, but I do think that pace is one of the most interesting conversations of the race.
All right, we'll get to that in a few seconds here, but in terms of pace, Always Shopping is like a high cruising speed, a tight mare who laid up close to the Via Borghese, and we're going to see in the end the result of that with her and Traipsing coming out of a race here a few weeks ago as the prep.
And Captain Cruz as well, who did have a bit of a trouble. And I highlighted Captain Cruz because she was elevated to second through the disqualification of Great Island. That said, I just really do still wonder if she's quite as good as the other 2 mares that we're going to be seeing today. Always Shopping just absolutely exploded here, and I'm encouraged that she ran second by just ahead behind Blaine Debbie. 2 starts back in the Dowager as well. Traipsing is the number 2 on the inside there. She has been showing speed lately, but she did win here at Gulfstream last year coming from off the pace, so I'm curious what she'll be doing. Always Shopping is the one to beat off that effort. I like Lovely Lucky as well, though. I've always been a fan of hers, and I think she is one who really wants to go the distance for Tom Albertrani.
Yeah, she got good. I mean, from maiden 75, I mean, you were at Saratoga in late July. What was the vibe? I mean, that allowance race with her going 11 furlongs where she was almost 20-1 and ran a hole in the wind.
She really did. I mean, she was a big price that day, and I had liked the runner-up a little bit that afternoon, but she was so impressive. And speaking to Tom Albertrani, he just said, you know, she wants to go these distance races, and it's all about building a foundation to build her up for some of those longer distances. And then, of course, she went right into Graded Stakes Company behind Civil Union, who obviously was very good for Shug at the time.
Definitely dropping out of the Grade 1 Flower Bowl. A race, speaking of Shug, who he won it last year, of course, was Civil Union, and he trained a Hall of Famer, in fact, in Inside Information, our namesake of Saturday's 9th race, a Grade 2 on the main going 7 furlongs for the older fillies and mares. And it goes Sky Beauty, Heavenly Prize, Inside Information, my 3 favorite fillies of all time, and lucky to have watched her and her entire career, many of those races in person as a teenager at Belmont. And as far as her race today, Inside Information, just as far as like sheer numbers go, I think the Sugar Swirl has to be like the first pre-race, you know, narrative point, because half the field's coming out of that race where Ladies Island wired, and then there was just like a traffic jam and a bunched up field right behind her.
And I think Sound Machine really took the worst of it, as Ladies Island was on the lead there. I had picked Bronx Beauty, and she was second, so I definitely was hoping for a takedown in there.
You're not salty.
No, not at all. But Sound Machine on the inside, she does take the worst of it with having to steady there right at the wire. It happened late in the race. I would expect Cinnabunny, who showed a lot of speed with Kate DeMasi at Parks, to maybe be a little bit more aggressively ridden today. Bronx Beauty, I think 7 is pushing it for her. I think she's a better 6 furlong runner, which is why I kind of had her further down this time. I respect this is my time, but I, like you, ended up with some horses not from that Sugar Swirl.
Interesting.
And I had the same kind of thought process. One more time for Pacific Gale. I'm hoping she just gets a good trip in here today.
She's run some big races, hasn't won in quite some time, but she is one of these overachievers that always seems to run to her competition, and does she bust through today? I'm hoping that's simply the case with the 4 This Is My Time, and it's been her time. She has gotten stronger, better, faster. That is clearly evident. You draw a line basically through the race. She flipped out in the gate 3 back on October 8th, and she's been almost flawless here over her last 4 starts or so for Kathleen O'Connell, and just has that sort of low gear, high cruising speed, but just that relentless sort of, very much one-paced, I'm just going to grind you down into submission.
She ran really, really well last time over Movie Moxie, who had been in very good form too, and I believe was a shorter price in that race as well. And certainly hats off to Kathleen, who's been having a very good meet too.
Yeah, we like KO. Picked up a winner here yesterday or the day before, and seems like a very nice filly. We'll see how the Florida bred does in the inside information. We hit double digits, and the last non-Pegasus race goes at a mile and a half here. Second time we're going 12 and 3 turns on this turf course today in the Grade 3 McKnight. Make no mistake, and we'll talk about obviously more than Barkley's horse on the rail and Doswell, but it may simply begin and end with a horse who, man, he was running some good races previously, but Barkley, I mean, has just got this horse by Giants Causeway breathing fire.
And as we look at the Fort Lauderdale, it's shown so much speed in his 2 races off that big layoff, breaking his maiden as a 5-year-old. He had a little bit of a stop and start kind of trip this day in the Fort Lauderdale, and there was a very hot pace in there. And I think with Halliday factor this on the front end, it was a smart move by Junior Alvarado in taking him off of it. And he said he rated really kindly for him. Finished up really well on the inside, and I had noted before the race that he looked calmer, more professional, acting better than I've ever seen him before. And I think the biggest hats off goes to Barkley's partner and assistant trainer, Robin Smullen, who Barkley had said very candidly, she's the only one that can ride him and handle this horse because he's very, very difficult, and the team has done a great job with him.
They definitely have, as has Tom Albertrani and his crew, keeping Sadler's Joy around. We were kind of chuckling yesterday. It feels like he's a little older than an 8-year-old. He's been such a mainstay in these grade 1s and grade 2s, routing and going, from a mile and a quarter or 11 furlongs out to a mile and a half and beyond for so many years. What's the story with him coming out of a loss in the Red Smith as he capped his 7-year-old season? Do we have an issue at some point where Father Time starts to catch up with him? What are your thoughts?
I think now that's the biggest question. He had been a little bit of a victim with some slow paces, softer turf courses, and last time in the Red Smith, I felt it was a little flat. That said, I'm a big fan. I'd be thrilled to see him win. I think he's an awesome horse, and I had mentioned this yesterday. I think the coolest thing is that his first graded stakes appearance was in this race in the McKnight back in 2017, where he ran second behind Taglib. I just love that, and that he's still in training.
Yeah, good luck to him and the 11 Channel Cat. Both those horses are, although Channel Cat's a little younger, cut from the same cloth. They have not taken the easy road or easy measures by any steps. They've been ambitiously campaigned and have run pretty hard. I would imagine both with the 11 Channel Cat and with me taking the 7 Tide of the Sea also out of the Fort Lauderdale, I just think for both, clearly, a mile and an eighth just isn't what they want to do. And that race was so deep. I'd love to see Tide of the Sea get back to those front running or at least up there on the lead tactics, because he was getting good in a hurry late last year for Mike Maker on the grass.
He really was, and I think it's also great to see that he won going a mile and a half on the turf at Keeneland, 2 starts back, out of his comfort zone, ranked last time. Again, there was a very hot pace behind 2 quality horses in that Fort Lauderdale, which came up like a grade 1, even though it was a grade 2 for sure. So I'm right there with you. I think both of them have a shot out of that race.
Now we've got 12 coming up in the opening Pegasus race. This will go as the 3rd running of the $1 million Pegasus Turf on the grass, naturally at a mile and 3/16. Very wide open board. Todd Pletcher again in the run up over the last few weeks. He has been first and foremost the biggest story and the most important narrative, just by the basis of him having 3 horses, led naturally by Colonel Liam, who's 7-2 on the morning line and is coming out of a win against what was then a 3-year-old restricted crew of horses in the Tropical Park Derby. I know you're a fan too, and a lot of people are. I'd like to think he is still very much just realizing and coming into his own. I think he's going to run giant today.
He is, and we can go right into the replay of that Tropical Park Derby, which was off of a bit of a layoff, and Todd had been candid saying that he wanted to get prep races for all 3 of his horses over the turf course here, and I thought that that really kind of stamped Colonel Liam as certainly a force on the turf, as he had run very well in the Saratoga Derby with a wide trip and finishing up very well behind 2 Grade 1 winners in Domestic Spending and Gufo. Obviously, it's tougher competition today, but he's a beautiful horse, monster pedigree. He's really found his home on the turf, and while I like him, I'm a fan, I'm rooting for him. I think he's going to be the favorite. I think he might actually not offer much value at all.
No, he's going to be overbet. I really,
Yeah.
truly believe
Me
he's going to
too.
be an underlaid favorite. And the fact of the matter with that is, I mean, you can talk to your blue in the face about him, again, still improving and taking another step forward, and today's the day he runs his best race. But, you know, some of these more seasoned horses that are older and have been around for a long time, I mean, they are like the yardstick in this race, and he's got to improve a little bit to run with the likes of another Twist of Fate, and even let me ask you, I mean, Largent and Social Paranoia, who I've got 2nd and 4th, respectively. What do you think of them coming back for Todd?
This race is so competitive because I think you can make a case for both of them. Largent, though he just debuted in graded stakes last time, he's not done anything wrong in his entire career. He's run 1st or 2nd. He's won 6 of 9, won the Fort Lauderdale. He did get a great pace to run at from off of it with Halliday and Factor This setting the pace that day. But I thought that he ran very, very well and, again, hasn't done anything wrong. Same thing really with Social Paranoia, who did win off of a layoff and ran fine coming off in that 7.5 furlong race, but he's run well going longer before too, though it's curious as it seemed like cutting back to a mile, going a little bit shorter, actually really showed another side of him, but he has effectively run longer before.
Now, breaking the rules, will be running in the longest race of his career, stretching out slightly off that prep blast out in the Fort Lauderdale. I really thought this horse earlier in his career for Shug may have been the second coming of Point of Entry. I mean, he was a really exciting prospect, some lengthy layoffs, some convalescing. It seems like Shug, though, has got him once again on a little bit of a bullish run, and you think he's going to, I would imagine, build off that Fort Lauderdale last-out effort.
I am. I think he moved a little soon last time, and I had liked him that day, but I like John Velasquez getting back up, and no offense, of course, to Edgard. I thought he rode him well and taking advantage of that pace setup, but felt, and Shug had kind of backed this up as well, a little bit soon into that hot pace as Largent was making that final run. I thought he had a legit excuse with the yielding turf in the Knickerbocker. No excuse in the Lure. That was a bad race. But take that one aside, he's had a good year off the layoff, and I'm going to take a shot with him at a big price.
And in from the West Coast, we obviously have the 8, another Twist of Fate, who it's hard to argue, despite this being a bump up. I had watched that San Gabriel Stakes live on the First Bet app, which we invite you to download, whether you use Android or Apple, and he looked really good in the win. This is obviously another step forward for him, just as far as the depth of this crew.
It is, but he does have quite a bit of speed. He's clearly found his home on the turf, longer distance on the grass now. I saw him school the other day. He is a big boy, so when I saw him, I said, okay, you shouldn't have any problem with the distance. I think, of course, the class will be the question.
All right, class, there's plenty of that to go around in the 5th running of the $3 million Pegasus World Cup Dirt. Another maxed out cast of 12, led very much by 3 horses. The 4 Knicks Go, the 7 Tax, and Code of Honor, who's towards the outside for Tyler Gaffalione and Shug McGahee. Looking at Knicks Go, though, the puck may stop with this guy. We'll backtrack to his Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile win and the 3 races. I mean, this was the 3rd and capper to 3 just otherworldly, almost preternatural races he ran for Brad Cox.
It was really incredible what he did this Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile race. And down on the inside in the green colors, there's our friend Jesus' team coming up for second at 62-1. But Knicks Go, he was really geared down and broke the track record. And to be fair, there were many track records broken on Breeders' Cup weekend, but his 3 races with Brad Cox have been exceptional. Stretching out here once again. I had mentioned a little bit the pace. I feel like from the inside, stretching out, post one, Sleepy Eyes Todd has to send. I also feel like Mr. Freeze on the outside kind of has to send as well, and that's what he did in the Pegasus last year. Will Knicks Go be alone on the front end? I think that'll be the question. He's got a tremendous judge of pace in Joel Rosario aboard, and that'll be the biggest key, I think, to how this race unfolds for him.
I can see Joel just putting him on the lead and just riding him with the confidence that he's the most talented horse in the race, going 9 at Gulfstream. In my mind, that's a good running style to have on this track going this distance. We'll see if Knicks Go makes it 4 for 4 for trainer Brad Cox. Moving on to your top pick, the 7 Tax, who I've got in the second spot. We've known Tax for a while, liked him in last year's Pegasus World Cup Dirt, and I could get a sense that discussing the Harlan's Holiday 15 minutes before it was run, that you were very confident that the Tax going into that race, as good as he had been, maybe a little inconsistent in the past, may have been a thing of the past because he just has grown up and become a man.
He must have put on at least 100 pounds. He's physically just developed so much more, and horses are physically mature at the age of 5, and that's what we're getting to see from Tax right now. Coming out of the gate, that's something the connections have really worked on, and Danny Gargan had said he was just so sharp off the layoff last time. That's why he was on the lead, but he doesn't need the lead. He expects him to kind of be up in the first flight, not setting the pace, but right up there, and I think he should sit a beautiful trip today.
Code of Honor, danced a lot of dances. You got a Travers winner, a former Fountain of Youth winner. It's the last race on the page when he beat Bourbon War and Vacoma.
You kind of forget about that race, don't you?
Yeah, I almost said Holy Bull. I had to, check myself there mentally before, but no, he's a Fountain of Youth winner, Travers winner, the DQ over Vino Rosso in the 2019 Jockey Club Gold Cup. What do you think of him? I mean, if the pace develops the way you think it might, and you've got Mr. Freeze, Sleepy Eyes Todd, and of course Knicks Go, this race could start to crumble there off the far turn.
We could see Code of Honor picking things up late, and I thought, Bodie Express was loose on the lead last time in the Clark. Maybe a touch flatter than I would have liked to see in the stretch overall, but he's been a tricky horse throughout his whole career, and I think that the 1 1/8 here at Gulfstream actually suits him perfectly, and I hope he just comes running and closing off of it, and it's certainly exciting for Tyler Gaffalione, too, having a mount like this.
Yeah, it's very cool. Tyler obviously having won the Pegasus Turf last year with Zulu Alpha, a Florida boy, a local boy, much like the man upstairs who we're going to check out now. That's track announcer Pete Aiello with those scratches and changes.